sunny, picture-perfect island in Spain called Mallorca that you would normally associate with super fun holidays. Well, after reading this book, you may never think of it the same way again. Hello amazing humans on the net, welcome to another episode of lesser known classics, and the book we're going to be talking about today is The Island by Ana María Matute. Strangely, almost no one seems to be talking about this book on YouTube. I think I found only one review, and yet in Spain Ana María Matute is a literary giant, and having just finished this book written by her, I think it deserves more attention. So, this novel was published in 1959 and it is set just at the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s. The main protagonist here is a 14-year-old Matia whose mother has died and whose father has been sent to the front. So she's being shipped off to Mallorca. Up until now, she's been living in mainland Spain. And so she's being shipped off to Mallorca to live with her grandmother. A woman who is far from the sort of doting, caring grandmother that we normally have in mind. Matia's grandmother is very strict, very rigid, she's quite domineering, and she sees Matia, who is a bit of a tomboy, as someone who needs to be tamed. It doesn't help that Matia has just been expelled from school for her violent behavior, but as we read the book and as we get to know Matia, we know that she is just typical lost, confused teenager who doesn't really have any support system, who doesn't receive a proper care and affection. And so while Matia is in Mallorca, her closest companion is her cousin named Borja. He is a little bit older than her and he has this bit of a cruel, manipulative streak to him, or at least that's how Matia sees him. Remember, we see everything through her perspective. And the two of them spend quite a lot of time together. They run fairly wild. They are left to their own devices and they have quite a bit of freedom. There's also this group of unruly boys they mix with. No girls are mentioned. And also a strange boy named Manuel, for whom Matia begins to develop certain feelings. I don't want to be talking too much about the plot because this is not a very long novel. This is just under 200 pages. But because the novel mainly unfolds through Matia's perspective, the book is heavy with narrative as opposed to dialogue. And because of its reliance on this introspection, this makes it for quite a slow and immersive read, but it's not something you rush through, and especially the first half of the book will feel quite slow. The second half does pick up the pace a little bit, but definitely not a book you want to rush through. I know I've talked about other coming-of-age books on this channel before, including Hetty Dorval. This is very different. Remember, the Civil War has just broken out, and so this story is much more tense, more atmospheric, and even I would go as far as to say it feels oppressive at times, because you have this continuous sense of a creeping dread. And that's because this novel doesn't just trace the personal anxieties of a teenage girl. It uses her inner turmoil to explore the injustice and the violence of the Spanish Civil War. Let's not forget that when Ana María Matute was writing this novel, Franco was still in power, because we are in 1959, and so this perhaps was her very clever way of dealing with the censorship at the time. She was still very much criticized by Franco's government, and she was even stopped from working as a journalist. However, this book did get published. And so what we have in this book is not just the layer of the personal tensions or even the family tensions, because there are some very difficult and strange family dynamics presented to us in here, but also political tension and even historical tension. We have several references in this book to the persecution of Majorca's Jews in the 15th century, and they were very horrific. So we have this commentary on the past and how it lingers and keeps coming back to the surface. And so the two key characters in here, Mathia and Borja, these two teenagers, they are very much affected by all that is happening around them, by the past, but at the same time, they are not protected by the presence of a moral guide like you would see, for example, in To Kill a Mockingbird. There's no Atticus in here, even though both novels deal with social injustice and with the loss of innocence. These two teenagers in here in the island are largely left to navigate this cruel world on their own. And you can feel the weight of that almost on every page as they become almost infected by these dark times. And even the natural world in this book reflects the darkness. The island that you see presented in here is not idyllic. Quite the opposite. It's presented in this very eerie and almost hostile way. You have the wind that screams against the cliffs, for example, or you have the sea that is described as a deep blue threat, terrifying and unsteady. All of this contributes to this mood of suffocation and the mood of unease. This is a story about loneliness, about oppression, about conflict, loss of innocence, war trauma, which, by the way, Matute describes in a very unflinching way. And also this is a story of claustrophobic, small, insular communities. It is also a story about prejudice and the concept of an outsider, something that we see in books like The Grapes of Wrath or To Kill a Mockingbird. But here this is handled a bit differently, because unlike in The Grapes of Wrath or To Kill a Mockingbird, the way the ending is written there is a glimmer of hope. This is much darker. At least this is how I interpret it. And there are no real answers provided to you. I really think this is a book worth reading. And if you're a seasonal reader, the summer is just around the corner and the majority of the story happens in the middle of a very hot summer. However, obviously this is not the lightest read, so if you're expecting a relaxing holiday read, this is not it. But if, like me, you are interested in books that open up windows into other countries and their histories, and books that make you want to dig deeper into their cultural and political context, and also if you enjoy books about just generally human condition, you should definitely pick up this book. Let me leave you with one of my favorite quotes from this book, which is on page 80. From high up in the square, where the Jews had been burned alive, the sea was like a deep blue threat, terrifying and unsteady, mixing with the wind and sky. And it seemed that shining worlds could disappear there, and rootless echoes wander and be lost. Looking down, it seemed that everything must roll down to meet it, and life seemed both terrible and remote. This is the kind of writing that you find in this book. It is incredible. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy this episode. Do let me know if you have read any classic books that have spoken to you in a special way and that maybe are not talked about enough, whether these are modern classics, whether these are older classics. I would love to hear from you. Thank you again, and I'll see you in my next episode.